Hello everyone, Johnny Hurricane here from GamersHeroes.com, and today we're going to be talking about Reverse, Resident Evil Verse, the multiplayer Resident Evil thing that they showed yesterday at the showcase, and just why are they doing this when no one's asked for it? Let's get started. Okay, so Resident Evil showcase yesterday, pretty good, minus this thing. Showed off a little bit of Resident Evil 8, which got a good release date for early May. I want to say May 8th, but either way, early May is a good time because you're not going to have a ton of competition, and yeah, it's actually snowing today, which is great. That's Michigan for you. Last week raining, this week it's actually snowing. A little bit windy, but not too bad, so hopefully the mic doesn't get blitzed by it. It should be kind of protected by my jacket, I hope. But anyways, where were we? Okay, we're not going to talk about the showcase outside of the Reverse, and we're calling it Reverse because it is a reversal of what they're doing. But before we get into that, I'm going to give you a brief little history here on Resident Evil multiplayer games. Okay, and there's been some good ones, but we're going to start with Resident Evil Outbreak. Now, quite frankly, this was their best one. If you don't count 5 and 6 where the co-op was, their first shot was their best shot. This is on PlayStation 2. The only problem was back then a lot of us didn't really have the capability or the internet, quite frankly, to handle what this game. It was it was one of those games that came out before its time. I had a lot of fun in Resident Evil Outbreak, but I didn't have a PlayStation 2, so I had to play it at my friend's house, and it had long loads, and it was, like I said, if you go back to this and look at what they did since, it was actually pretty good. And there's a zoo level, which was really cool. They did a little wacky things with this game, and it worked out. This is, quite frankly, Outbreak should be what they're doing again, but they're not. Okay, so after that, we had Resident Evil 5 Versus. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but Resident Evil 5 came out, and there was an unlockable in it called Versus Mode. And this was a big deal because this was kind of before we had got, I don't know if you hear this bird, but there's even birds out today. This was before microtransactions were actually like included on the disc, and to unlock Versus Mode you had to pay $5. I remember this because it was a big deal in the news, like what is this? It was already on the disc and we're not getting it, and this was, of course, this had probably happened before that, but this was the big one I remember, and going forward obviously it kept going. But Resident Evil 5 co-op, that was a good one. So we had Outbreak, that was fine. Resident Evil 5, again, not the best in the series, but co-op was fun. Resident Evil 6 we'll even talk about, but that was really, really bad, but still had co-op and it worked, it's fine. You'll see as I go on that these co-op games aren't so bad. And now we're going to go to Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Old game, ORC, if you abbreviated it. I don't remember this game very much, but I do remember beating it, and the only reason I beat it was because my 2 Resident Evil fans and myself played it online together. It wasn't a great game, but again, because it was co-op and because it was Resident Evil, I got through it, just like Resident Evil 6. After that, this one you probably didn't even know about or remember because nobody wants to remember this. It was called Umbrella Corps. It released, I think, I should have put the date down, but I think it was like 2016 in like June and summer it came out. I think its Metacritic's got to be below 50. It is a versus game where you just are like these Umbrella agents like fighting against zombies and each other, and it's just absolutely abysmal. It was a poor effort, and it got tanked, and there hasn't been any DLC or anything for it, so obviously that game did terribly, thankfully. And that is the first, I guess Resident Evil 5 Versus, but you got a main game with that, so it wasn't as bad, except you had to pay $5 for it, which, whatever. And after that, we ended up getting Resident Evil Resistance in Resident Evil 3. That's the most recent one, obviously. Here's the thing, if that was doing well, the showcase would have had DLC for it, so it's obviously not doing well. And I played it like once or twice, that game. It's like, well, we'll get into it, but. So anyways, all these online, you can see where I'm going, right? Co-op is what they excel at, not versus. The only versus game that they really have that works for them is Street Fighter, and that's a fighting game. Marvel vs. Capcom, you can argue, the older ones at least, the new one not so much. But again, the competitive fighting scene is what they have on lock. I don't know why they're trying to make this into a versus. I'm surprised actually that it's not a battle royale. That is where I thought they would go, and I think they still will. I think after this it's a battle royale, but for now, we have Reverse, which is this competitive shooter with all these Resident Evil characters. Like, we want to play as all these Resident Evil characters together, but we do not want to be shooting each other, not to mention it looks bad as well. This is not the only series where co-op actually works. Monster Hunter, a very good example of good co-op gameplay. Capcom excels a lot more at co-op than they do at versus, and they need to really stick to that. Mercenaries could have been, you'll hear me say Mercenaries a lot because I love Mercenaries and they just let it die for whatever reason. A lot of people like Mercenaries. I don't know why they keep trying to add these verses instead of just giving us Mercenaries. Well, I do know, but we'll get into that in a second. And of course they have like Dead Rising and even Lost Planet. Those are co-op games. And the Resident Evil series itself, it's all co-op and it works very, very well. So now we get to the point of why are they doing this specifically? Reverse, Resident Evil Versus, whatever you want to call it. Stupid name, by the way. Not as bad as the Xbox Series X, which we'll get into the whole gold thing in a moment. I don't think it needs this doesn't need its own separate video, but I will get into it in a second. So they're doing this, yes, money a little bit. Normally the answer is money, right? Because here's the thing, you can obviously charge for more characters. It's simple as that. So they can do that. I just don't think it's gonna make them too much money outside of the first month. What they're really doing here is, you might learn something here. The RE engine, which does not stand for Resident Evil, it actually stands for To the Moon engine, which is why it has the moon symbol. So congratulations, you might have just learned something about the RE engine. It's a very good engine. They run a lot of their games on it now. Resident Evil 2 and 3 looks amazing. Resident Evil 8 looks pretty good. Resident Evil 7 even looked good. And of course, Monster Hunter runs on it as well. So the thing is, when you have this well-established, but not something like Epic, or I was gonna say Frostbite, but Frostbite's abysmal, Unity. These kind of more commonly known engines, and you bring in new teams, they have to, you know, kind of learn the ropes for these engines. And that's where Resident Evil Resistance and Resident Evil and Reverse comes from. You have these kind of not, I don't want to say unqualified, but they're kind of fresh developers, and you have to put them on something. A lot of the times when they do this, you don't actually see the project. They'll work on something and it actually won't come to fruition. It happens more often than you would think. At Capcom, apparently not, because this thing shouldn't have come to fruition at all. But that's what's really going on. They got these kind of, again, I don't want to use the word unskilled, but greenhorn developers that need something to work on. And I think a lot of the time, because when you're working on a game, there is no way you can't know it's terrible just by looking at it, because that is a versus, and we'll get into it in a second, but they just got them working on it, but it's not meant to see the light of day. It's like Skull and Bones, right? Where is Skull and Bones? Who knows if it's even alive at this point. So, but that's what they're doing. They have these kind of green developers, as I said, working on these littler projects to get them used to the engine, because this does help them learn the engine. I give them that, that's for sure. It's just that Resident Evil's shooting style is more methodical. It's more slow paced, and it's intentional. It has to be that way to increase the tension and the pressure when you're playing these survival horror games. If you look at a typical third-person shooter, it's a lot more twitch focused. Like it's like a lot of it's really fast. And if you had that in Resident Evil, it would be more of an action game than it would be a survival horror game, because yeah, you can pull your gun out and shoot something real fast, but a lot of the times you're slowly aiming for the head or the leg, whatever you want to shoot, and that takes a couple of seconds. And in a versus mode, that doesn't work a lot of the times, because you got to pull your gun out and just shoot. We'll use Fortnite as an example, right? Jumping around, shooting, twitch shooter. That's what it is. That's what third-person shooters are meant to be. And that's really why this Reverse thing isn't going to work out, is because it's shooting gameplay. It doesn't work for the versus mode. It really doesn't. Didn't in 5. You couldn't even move in 5. You had to stop and aim in 5. Like that kind of worked because both players had to stop. But now you have people moving and dodge rolling and all this, and it's just like, bro, what are you doing? Like, this is just something that they should have had them made and just been like, okay, we're not going to show this to anybody. Another thing, funny thing, those who might not know this, they had signups for this a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last month, but they didn't tell you what it was. You know why they did it before they told you what it was? Because nobody would have fucking signed up for this thing, tell you that much. Nobody cares. So I'm sorry, I'm getting the sniffles here because I've been out. It's actually really cold today, but I'm out here anyway, so let's get into it. Yeah, so they basically tricked us into signing up for a beta for a game we didn't care, because a lot of us, again, we're still hanging on to that Mercenaries thing. And if you don't know what Mercenaries is, it's just basically survival. You got to get time, and it's a point. It's really fun because you get to play characters that you don't have in the main game, like Wesker. Well, Wesker was in 4, but anyways, the point is, they need to bring back freaking Mercenaries if they want, because again, you can add new characters to Mercenaries and have them be microtransactions, and people will pay for them. It's so obvious. But Capcom is, I mean, they are flying high, so I really shouldn't be talking shit about them. But the point is that there's things that we want that they're not giving us that are just low-hanging fruit that they should do. So anyways, that is why it is that it's really happening. Yeah, a little bit money because I'm sure there will be microtransactions for new characters, but it's not gonna make them anything big. But it's really just to help these these green devs get used to working on the engine. This project really should have never seen the light of day. Okay, that's for that game, for Resident Evil Reverse. Real quick, I am gonna go over what's going on with Xbox Live Gold because the price is basically doubled. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on this because I'm gonna say what everyone else is saying, and it's obvious, we all know this. Gamers are relatively smart when it comes to this type of stuff because we've been dealing with it for so damn long. They're doubling the price because they want you to get into Game Pass Ultimate. They want you to stay on Game Pass Ultimate, that is why. And by double, I mean it's like for 6 months of gold now it is $60, which means it's $120 a year for gold unless you stay on or something. There's weird little caveats and whatnot. But I don't even think you can buy a year-long pass anymore. I think it's just 6 months. On the other side of it, I believe Game Pass Ultimate, which comes with Xbox Live Gold and Game Pass, which you should have anyways at this point. I mean, just drop gold and do that. I think it's $150 a year, so it's really comparable. It's just that they really want you on that Game Pass because Game Pass to them is now how they are getting these developers to put their games onto Game Pass. Like, hey, we have this many subscribers, which means this many users are going to be playing your game that might not have played it before. It's a very strong metric, and as Xbox has said many times, they do not care about selling consoles so much as they care about you being in their ecosystem and being in their Game Pass. They don't think they're making enough money off Xbox Live Gold. That's the real thing. So yes, it is money, but really it's just so they can get you over to Game Pass Ultimate. But anyways, this video, as I said, mostly about Resident Evil, a little bit about Xbox Live Gold. I just didn't want to do a separate video on that because it would have been like 2 minutes. But that's it for me. Reverse, again, it's just being worked on because these guys need experience. And to get experience, you have to work on a game, and you can't put them on a game. The other thing is, Resident Evil comes out, it's almost a yearly franchise. It's coming out at a decent clip. Sometimes you'll get a year off, but for the most part, it's coming out yearly. Resident Evil 4 Remake is, they didn't say it, but it is currently in development. And the A team, the Resident Evil 2 team, is currently working on that, which is, that's what you want. But you don't want these green guys working on it because they might slow things down and then you can't get the yearly franchise which you want because Resident Evil's selling great right now. Although if they keep putting crap out like Reverse, it's gonna, yeah, it's free though. So I mean, that's the thing, it's free, right? It comes with the game. So it's kind of like, okay, I guess I don't have to play it. I don't have to buy it. That beta thing was scummy as hell, but yeah. Anyways, that's what's up with that. So anyways, that'll do it for me. Pretty nice day. Hope you guys enjoyed the snow. For those of you that don't have to deal with it. Those of you that do have to deal with it, I'm sure you were saying, what the hell is he doing? But if you liked what you saw and got what you needed, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Later, Gators.